All right, this next video segment is talking about slavery. So, as we discussed in the previous video, as a business owner who needs a product for their business, you have only three choices. You can buy it, you can make it yourself, or you can do without it. Well, we have a little bit of a situation here regarding one particular kind of product, a product called labor. You see, we've created a fourth option. That fourth option is called slavery. That's where we simply take it. I don't want to buy it because I don't want to pay the price. I can't do it myself, or I choose not to do it myself. And obviously, I'm not going to do without it because my business goes out of business. We'll get into more of that later too. You have something about automation, which allows a fourth option. That's kind of a form of both 2 and 3, do without it and do it yourself. Okay, but that's a separate topic. We created a fourth option. It's called slavery. So, what is slavery? Well, that depends. I mean, if a person is living in your house, taking care of your family, and they don't have a choice, well, they're a slave. That's called indentured servitude. The Negro or other minority working in the cotton fields under a whip and a gun, that's slavery. Okay? But what is slavery to Business Econ 101? Break it down. Forget about all these racial terms and all that stuff. Break it down to mathematics. What is slavery? Slavery is theft of labor. Slavery is a form of theft. What's being stolen? Well, labor. I'm taking your labor without paying for it. I am technically paying for it, just not paying you or not paying the right amount for it. We're going to get into that as well, because slaves are actually pretty expensive. You got to take care of your slaves. It's like having an expensive tractor that you just spend $500,000 on. You're going to take care of your tractor, aren't you? It costs you a lot of money. Well, slaves do have a cost. You got to buy them, you got to train them, you got to take care of them, you got to feed them, you got to clean them, clothe them, house them, give them medical care, because if they die on you, you got to go buy a new slave. Okay? So slaves have costs. We figured out a way to have slaves while paying them a slave wage that actually costs us less than if we just had straight up slaves and took care of them. We call it minimum wage. But let me explain this. Let's say you want to go buy a nice little sci-fi ray gun from your local science fiction shop. And that directed energy weapon from Planet XYZ is pretty expensive. You want a gun that's pretty cheap, but if you want a ray gun, you're going to pay 10 grand for that ray gun. They're expensive. They're expensive toys. Okay, so if I want a ray gun, I go to you. I can either choose to build a ray gun myself, or I can choose to buy a ray gun from you, or I can choose to do without a ray gun. Each of those purchases has the same choices as a business. You can buy it, you can do it yourself, or you can do without it. Okay. Let's say, obviously, I don't have the skills to build the ray gun myself. I especially don't have access to the dilithium crystals on Planet XYZ, so I don't have that little crystal that I need to make the ray gun actually work. So I can't really build it myself. Okay, I could do without it, but I don't want to. I want the ray gun. I want my little pew pew pew. I want my little ray gun. So I have to buy it. Now I can negotiate to some extent, but ultimately I have to pay somebody for it, and I have to pay them more than it costs them to procure or make the ray gun. Now, there's a fourth option. I can steal it. Remember before I said you have 3 valid options. This would be what we call an invalid option. You're committing a crime. You're stealing it. If I break into your shop and steal your ray gun, what have I done? I've committed theft. Okay? The price of the ray gun is $10,000. If I break into your shop, leave $5,000 on a counter, and walk out with the ray gun, what have I done? I've still stolen the ray gun. But I paid for it. No, you didn't. You left half the money. We didn't agree to that. Okay? The price is $10,000, not $5,000. Okay? So you've still stolen the ray gun. Okay? Now, your next statement in your head, but the minimum wage worker doesn't apply because they accepted the wage. They agreed to it. No, they didn't. They have outwardly accepted the wage, but they have not agreed to it. They don't have an alternative, because if they don't work, they die. So imagine if I went back behind the counter, whispered in the retailer's ear, and said, "I'm going to rape and murder your entire family. Here's a picture of your child hogtied in the back room. Now you're going to agree to sell me this gun for $5,000. And then I leave $5,000 on the counter. I pick up the ray gun, and you say, "Yes, sir, I agree to that. You have a nice day. Enjoy your ray gun." It's still theft. You've coerced me into accepting the cheaper price for the ray gun. That's how labor works in the United States today. We coerce workers into accepting less than cost even. Don't even forget about asking price. We have coerced them into accepting less than cost for their labor because the implied whisper behind the counter is, "You're going to become homeless, lose everything, and die a miserable, horrible death in negative 10-degree weather unless you have this job. So you think you're going to take it? Well, I'll find somebody else. They're all offering the same price." You see what I mean? It's not a choice. There's no freedom of choice there. The implied coercion of suffering, homelessness, starvation, and death exists. The only way that implied coercion doesn't exist is if a minimum wage is mandated, and that minimum wage is enough to survive on. If it's not, the coercion's there. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to agree with it. It doesn't matter what you agree with. It's there. Reality doesn't care if you accept it or not. Reality is still going to impose itself on you, whether you agree with it or not. But a lot of you are going to be, no, that's not how it works. No, that's not. They agreed. It's a contract. They agreed. It's free. It's not. You can delude yourself. You can pretend. You can lie. You can pretend to erect a Steve Jobs reality distortion field around life around you and pretend everything is through rose glasses, and it's not. There's no freedom of choice there. You work or you die. It's that simple. And worse, it's theft from all wage earners, even the better paid wage earners, because all wages, with very few exceptions, all wages are based off of minimum wage. You're getting $20 an hour because that guy's getting $7 an hour. If that guy were getting 20, you'd be getting 35, because it's a scale from the lowest point up. That's how the value is determined, because the market forces work both ways. Okay, the availability of workers works both ways, except we've rigged it by making the mandatory legal minimum starting point so low that we have destroyed the laborer's influence into that market and the supply and demand. We've destroyed that. And by suppressing wages, people now need more than one job in order to survive, which further reduces the number of available jobs for other people who need them, which further suppresses the pressure on increasing wages. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a rigged system. It's the guy whispering behind the counter, "I'm going to rape your daughter and kill your wife unless you accept the wage." We just call it homelessness and starvation. Okay? But ultimately, it's still slavery, because your labor is being taken from you and you are not being compensated for it. That's theft of labor. Theft of labor is slavery. Is it black man in a cotton field slavery? No. But the end result is still the same. Your labor is being stolen. You don't have a choice. And you're not getting paid for it. Okay? In 1968, minimum wage was $14 an hour. The next video is going to explain that. Okay? Median per capita income was $66,000 a year. Today, minimum wage is less than $6 an hour. Median per capita income is less than $38,000 a year, while productivity is up 350 to 400%. So productivity is up, but minimum wage is down by over 50%, and median per capita income is also down by almost 50%. Food is not expensive. Food is substantially cheaper today than it was in 1968. Your car is cheaper today than it was in 1968. About the only things in our society that are slightly more expensive, depending on niche markets, than what they were in 1968 is housing healthcare, and education. Everything else is cheaper. But it costs so much. No, it doesn't. You're just being paid less. So it feels like it costs more because you're getting less. And your brain is not wired to understand that. And that is not your fault. Okay? So the next video is going to explain inflation and buying power.